Welcome, Specimen. Today is Thursday. It's a follow-up of yesterday's video, because yesterday I talked ravingly about the good addition of borrowed powers in this patch. I said the tier set was a double thumbs up addition. I said the creation catalyst with the Great Vault giving you the tier set opportunities was also a double thumbs up system, not to mention the double legendary. Finally, if a little bit late, coming into the game, the acquisition was also quite easy, albeit perhaps a bit too late, so only one thumb up. However, for today then, we have the following logical question. Why? Why do things come so late? Why is it so often that when we look back at the end of an expansion, so we look back at all the patches and all the changes that happened in the expansion, we seem to find this trend happening more and more often, which is the trend that the expansion at the end is kind of better than what it was at the start. Okay. Ever since Modern WoW, I consider Modern WoW since the introduction of Mythic Plus, so Legion, BFA and Shadowlands, we have gotten very similar introductions, we have gotten very similar things into the game. We have gotten Warforging and Titan Forging in Legion and BFA, Mythic Plus of course was there, we have gotten a Mega Dungeon introduction in each expansion, Legion with Karazhan, BFA with Mechagon and Shadowlands with Tazavesh. We have gotten an extra minigame added into the game. In Legion it was the Withered training scenario, in BFA it was Island Expeditions and even Warfronts, and in Shadowlands it was the Torghast game mode. So the modern WoW versions of the game have followed a pretty simple pattern every time. Not to mention of course the dreaded AP. We started with Artifact power, we moved on to Azerite power, and we ended up with Anima power. So these three versions of the game have been quite similar in what Blizzard was planning. So the question is clear. Why? Why at the end of each of these expansions we always find that some systems that used to be tedious, grindy, time-gated, annoying to deal with end up being almost good, almost pleasant to deal with? How is that? You can go back and think about systems like Azerite armor. Remember the absolute state of Azerite armor when it was released. You couldn't trade it, you had no Great Vault, so you only had one chance at one item out of the entire pool of Mythic Plus gear from your weekly cache. Mythic Plus did not drop Azerite armor pieces, so you had one chance at one boss when you defeated it, one chance at your weekly vault. If you didn't get it, you were screwed. Not to mention, Azerite armor had plenty of shitty traits. They had one less throughput, one less damage or healing ring available. Plenty of the things at the start, the most effective ones were passive, all specs type of traits. They weren't even specific to your own class and spec, so it was terrible. And then by the end of the expansion, we get a vendor for you to choose which item you want or which slot you want the piece in. You had multiple changes to the traits, becoming much more spec specific. They added an extra ring of throughput options, and then by BOD they even added what they thought were the best in slot, the strongest Azerite traits by default, forcefully in the raid gear to make sure you were getting always a good one in the raid, right? And the question is why? The question is why did it come so late? We can do the same with Legion and the legendaries. The initial situation of the legendaries of Legion was honestly criminal. Blizzard should have been prosecuted in front of the tribunal of gaming law because of what they did. The legendaries being completely RNG, you had absolutely zero way of targeting a specific legendary. No idea where it was coming from. Blizzard made the activities increasing the bad luck protection basically being everything. So you were possessed by this demon trying to do all different sorts of activities to increase your chance of looting a legendary. And then by the end of Legion, what do we get? We get the vendor. We get a currency that you earn by doing all sorts of content, which awards you the chance to actually pick the legendary you want. So this is the question we have right now. As we get into Dragonflight, as we get closer to the next expansion, we start getting worried about the same things we have seen in the previous ones, because it's easy. It's easy to fall into the trap of being optimistic because you see things now. You are no longer in the horror of 1 year and a half ago, of things being time-gated, of having to do the mo every day, and the only reward was an extra socket option, of having to be stuck in things like covenants, being only one choice per covenant, the grind of renown, etc, etc. Now it all looks greener, now it all looks brighter, but we shouldn't make the mistake of expecting this to be the same as soon as the expansion launches, because that's when we had problems. We had problems at the start of the expansion. The start of Legion, the start of BFA, and the start of Shadowlands. Things were terrible. That's why I am getting kind of spooked for the release of Dragonflight when we look at how Blizzard has operated in the last 3 expansions. Obviously, the simple answer to this question is because they want to drag the play rate, they want to drag the user activity, the monthly active users, as long as possible, right? The reason why they make the campaign locked behind a weekly progression lasting 2 months is because this way, if you want to finish the campaign, you have to stay in for 2 months. If you have to wait for the release of the legendary, the second legendary in Shadowlands in this patch, you had to wait a month. If you wanted to wait for the creation catalyst, it was almost 2 months into the patch. So this idea of, they are stretching things out because it keeps the player base in for longer. That's the general cynical response you're going to get when put in front of this question. But I'm not falling for it. There must be something deeper, okay? There must be something deeper because it makes no sense, okay? I mean, even staying just in Shadowlands, we have another point that goes against the Blizzard wants you to stay in the game and wants you to grind. They are doing this on purpose, which is covenants. What is the point? What is the purpose in Blizzard's side, on Blizzard's end, to develop 4 different covenants, give them 4 different storylines, 4 different campaigns, very well defined, plus the following armor sets, transmog sets, mounts, whatever you want for all the different covenants, and then force you to choose one? Imagine if covenants were swappable from the start. Imagine if you had to grind the renown on all 4 of them at the start. Imagine if you could do their daily callings, their emissaries every day for all different ones. Wouldn't this push players to play more, right? If we go by Blizzard's plan of getting players to be more into the game, wouldn't this have worked better? Instead, that's what we got with the covenant system, which is quite weird. So when I started the question at the start of the video about why so late, there wasn't actually going to be an answer in this video. I actually don't know why they are often so late at, realizing what should be done in the game for better participation of the player base. That is what is confusing me a little bit at the moment, and what is getting me to be a little bit more worried about Dragonflight. Because, as I said already, Dragonflight is the release. And as we have seen from Legion, from BFA, and from Shadowlands, the worst part of the expansion is at release because of how many things are clunky, slow, and tedious to just crawl across to. So I can't quite put my finger on why. There are some points that I think we all share, we all believe to a degree, which is they're doing some things on purpose to drag the player base for longer. Some things they do because they didn't realize it was the bad choice, the bad option. I just can't quite pinpoint the hows and the whys of these choices, these decisions, right? I think this expansion will be known at the end with pretty much the covenants, the hill Blizzard decided to die on being the covenants. The restriction of player agency when it came to covenant option is definitely the most head-scratching decision they have had in this expansion. Many other things might have annoyed you to a degree, like how little grateful offerings were available in the game, how grindy the mo was, how disappointing the borrowed power system of Shards of Domination in Sanctum was. A few of these things might have disappointed you, but I'm pretty sure that the bigger of the complaints is going to be the way with which the Covenant system has been handled, this expansion. Especially, it's gonna hurt even more because that is supposed to be the big cornerstone, the big crowning jewel of the expansion, the feature of the Covenant systems. And the fact that it was botched so horribly is, of course, what is going to get remembered and reminded by players to Blizzard every time they want to make it sting a little bit. So I guess at the end of the video I get to turn the question back to you guys. Why so late? Why does Blizzard seem intent on being a little bit too slow at times with catching, gathering player feedback, and eventually caving in and doing what the players want? As I said, we have started positively talking about the good changes that this expansion has had. We have started talking about the fact that this why so late was definitely true for Legion, was definitely true for BFA, but for Shadowlands it has been much faster down the line. Many of the things we expected Blizzard, as usual, to leave for the end of the expansion, to leave for very late, happened much earlier on. If you remember, for example, the swappability of Covenants happened in 9.1.5, which is like 8 months ago. And several other things like continued, constant and progressive renown catch-up systems to make it even faster for you to get renown, the conduit catch-up system over several patches. So many things happened. Skips, we've gotten much more skips nowadays, skipping the entirety of the MO, skipping all of the stories no longer being needed for your progression with your Covenants. So we've gotten plenty of catch-ups much faster than previous expansions. Again, we have to bring in the cynical side of the community. Things happened faster now because Blizzard was in full panic mode. 9.1.5 was right after the series of lawsuits being thrown at Blizzard. Plus you had many content creators who went to shill over to Final Fantasy, so the community was in flames at the time. They were raging about pretty much anything, which meant, to the eyes of many players, 9.1.5 was sort of the press in case of emergency type of patch where they added many fan favorites in the game, many catch-up systems, many QoLs, and removal of grinds and barriers, artificial barriers into the game. So that's one of the cynical answers as to why Blizzard has not been as late in this expansion compared to Legion and BFA in listening to the community. The answer being because Shadowlands went downhill much faster, if at the very least in the eyes of the community, went downhill much faster, which meant Blizzard had to try to bring it up with some popular decisions. Which brings us back to the spookedness awaiting for Dragonflight. Many positive things happened in the second half of Shadowlands when it comes to good developer decisions. However, you have the looming threat, the looming possibility that this was just a one-time thing, a one-time emergency thing made by Blizzard because of how badly Shadowlands was going. So as we get into Dragonflight, they are planning to go back to their old ways, and they have actually learned nothing from this expansion. That is the only worrying trend that might happen with the next expansion. So I'm going to leave these thoughts and these prayers about a better future to you as well, leaving you with a question as to why is Blizzard so late sometimes with some decisions that to the player base seems obvious, and also if you believe that this improvement in listening the community happening in Shadowlands was mostly due to the bad reception that Shadowlands got at the start, and Blizzard will stop here, or if it will carry on into Dragonflight. So this is the question for this Thursday. With this being said, thank you guys for watching the video and for helping to grow and support the channel in whichever way you can, which includes liking and commenting on the video as well as subscribing to the channel. But for today, given the theme of the video, I am only going to allow players hooked on Hopium to subscribe, so only for the ones who believe that Blizzard will carry on this positive listening trend into Dragonflight. And with this being said, for the update time, I am also available on Twitter over here. And if you want to support me even more, guys, and get access to my Discord channel, you can also support me on Patreon over here. With this being said, Thank you guys again. See you guys soon. And in the meantime, what is going on? What the hell? Go away. Fuck off.